Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. I wanted to give a overview of the Unit 5 Workflow and Process Redesign assignment for the week, and actually in the next couple of weeks as you work with your partners and or group members on this. So this week, the focus is going to be getting together with your group and getting some work done, right? So as we look at the calendar here, you basically get 1 week to come together as a group and get going on the assignment. I'm here in Unit 5. And if you look in this section right here, groups and Zoom information, you will see your group members. And so you'll also find here information about ways to meet virtually. Google Hangout and phone conferencing is just fine, but I've found that Zoom is really nice. And it's also really intuitive and easy for students to use. We used to have a very clunky system, and Zoom is like a breath of fresh air. So I would encourage you all to use that. And here's information on that. You actually all have a Zoom account right now as CSS students, but if you have trouble or want more information on it, here is a link for you to go to. Okay, so you're going to use your CSS login credentials to use Zoom. Okay, all right, so there's your group information. And as I look at the calendar for this unit, I just want to quickly point out a couple of things. So I got to get there, July. So here we are. So today is Monday, the 19th of July, and Unit 5 begins. You do not need to have anything turned in or posted, I should say, until Wednesday, July 28th. At that time, you need to have your workflow diagram posted in the discussion board, okay? Then I'm going to skip over here to August. I can't believe we're already talking about August. But on August 1st, as a group, you need to have your workflow and process mapping report and your swim lane or workflow diagram, like finalized and due in Brightspace. And then you should also have your response posts done by Sunday, August 1st as a group. And there's instructions about how I want you to handle the response posts, okay? And then there is this teamwork self-assessment that I would like each of you to complete. It's kind of about your role in your group and how you function there. And so that is the only real independent assignment that you will have for this unit. All right, back to Unit 5. And let's take a look at the actual instructions, because I think all of this will make a lot more sense once I go through that. All right. As usual, I'm not going to read the assignment introduction, so please take some time to read that. The scenario is that you're a revenue cycle manager at a primary care clinic. You wear many hats at this organization and oversee revenue cycle functions like registration, billing, coding, etc. The management, maintenance, and implementation of the EHR and privacy and security are also under your purview. The organization has been sequentially implementing and adopting the EHR in a modular fashion, and you can look at what a sequential implementation looks like on pages 16 through 25 of the Margaret A. text. So the COVID-19 pandemic just hit, and you need to implement a more formal telehealth program. In preparation for telehealth visits, you asked a group of stakeholders to diagram the current process for carrying out patient registration. See the diagram below. Okay, so this is just kind of introducing you to the situation. So here's a registration process that this organization is currently using. So once you receive the diagram from those stakeholders, you got the diagram. Now you need to determine the best workflow for registering telehealth visits within the EHR and determine the considerations that may need to be accounted for in this process. So meaning registering patients for a telehealth visit. One of the important considerations you need to make is the fact that the patient must be registered in the EHR's patient portal in order to have a telehealth visit. So part of this assignment is really researching how telehealth applications work through different EHRs, right? And I'm actually doing some consulting work right now for a couple clinics, and I'm helping them with some telehealth processes and some of their redesign. And one of the things that I'm finding is a real challenge is getting patients to get signed up for the telehealth portal, because that is actually how the actual telehealth visit is launched. And the Zoom links are kind of generated out of that telehealth portal for the patient. And so if the patient doesn't have that portal access, they kind of have to do a whole nother process, right? And so those are some things, it's kind of like a little twist that I wanted to throw into this scenario, right? And we'll also have you kind of doing some digging. For those of you that are currently working in a healthcare organization, this might be a great opportunity for you to talk to those working in the organization that handle registration and those that are kind of dealing with telehealth visits to kind of see how things are done. But if not, there's a ton of information out there right now about telehealth because it's just such a hot topic, right? As we're coming down off of the COVID pandemic, I know telehealth is probably not as maybe popular of an option, but what I've found, at least working with the clinics that I'm working with, is that the providers really liked it. They liked having the flexibility of being able to see patients from their home, and so if they can do that even one day a week, they're very happy. And so the other thing is it's a way to kind of, what I'm finding is a way for them to kind of triage patients. So it's a way for the doctor to kind of check in with the patient and decide if they maybe need to be seen or see a specialist or those kinds of things. And then also it's a great way for follow-up care for chronic diseases like diabetes, asthma, and those kinds of things. So, it definitely has its pros and cons, but I think that what COVID did was kind of open our eyes to the potential that we have here for telehealth, right? So a lot of research that you can do, and luckily there's a lot of information out there right now. So in preparation for your first group meeting, so, you're going to want to meet obviously and talk about all this stuff, but it's really going to be beneficial if you come to that first meeting prepared. So this is my recommendation, right? First, I need you to read chapter 5 in Margaret A's textbook. Research telehealth visits and why some organizations launch telehealth visits through their EHR and registration for telehealth visits to fully understand the application and how it's used in ambulatory care. Because remember, this is a clinic. And then also reading chapter 15, which is on ambulatory care in Margaret A's text as well. So those are 3 things that you can do prior to your group meeting that will help you be more engaged in the conversation that you have with your group members. Again, then schedule a Zoom meeting with your group members. And here again is a link to the Zoom instructions. And then at your first Zoom meeting, you need to designate a group leader to serve as the facilitator for the meetings, designate a secretary to record minutes. You're actually going to be handing in your minutes, and then identify group member roles and responsibilities. Okay, so who's going to do what, right? And so your assignment deliverables for this assignment, you're as a group, you need to turn in your team meeting minutes. You're going to do a use case scenario, and you're also going to develop a telehealth patient registration workflow diagram in the form of a swim lane. Okay. And so it's your proposal. This is how we would like to redesign the current registration process to work for telehealth registration and telehealth patients. Now, I'm not saying that there's going to be a ton of changes to that initial registration process. It doesn't have to be elaborate and, every single detail. As you'll see, I have some instructions below to talk about that, but I definitely want to see some evidence that you researched and that you understand the process of that, getting a patient ready for a telehealth visit through registration. Okay. All right. So the first deliverable is your meeting minutes. So here's some information about that. So meeting minutes should be taken at all group meetings. The minutes need to be written using some type of word processing software, preferably Microsoft Word. They should be typed in 12-point Times New Roman font. I have no page length for this because it really is just kind of what you want to document and what you want to share with me. But what you have to share is the date and the times of your meetings, the group members that attended each meeting, the method or technology you use to meet. So if you met over Zoom or phone conference, and then the group members' names and each member's role and responsibility within the group. And then I should add, which I'm going to add actually right now, is the like outcomes from each meeting. So like the tasks to be done and, you know, any, and any, you know, other information that really that you want to share with me. Summarize discussion. Okay. I'm not sure why I didn't have that in there, but that was definitely important. So, okay, did that. Then your use case deliverable. So this is something that is very new to a lot of our students. And so, but is also something that's become really important when we talk about planning for IT resources, right? And redesigning things. And so this is a totally new component of this assignment as of this last spring, and it went very well. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys come up. So what you need to do is you need to develop and explain a process model for representing a specific scenario, also known as a use case, for at least 2 different users of a patient registration system. So a use case diagram provides a higher level view of a system, and these diagrams are the blueprints when designing a system, and they provide a simplified and graphical representation of what the system must actually do. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to identify a scenario or a use case where patient registration is currently used, or where the patient registration could be used for telehealth patient registration. Now, I've developed a use case here for CPOE. Okay, this is just a sample. I don't want you to, some students in the past have done use cases for CPOE, and that is not what I want you to do. This is simply an example, right? Okay, so below is a sample use case for CPOE. And in this scenario, there's an alert built into a computerized provider entry system that notifies the user of a potential drug-drug interaction. You need to identify it identifies 2 users that interact with CPOE with this scenario. And for example, a primary care physician and a pharmacist may be the users of CPOE, where the system alerts of a drug-drug interaction. So here's the sample, so you know what I'm talking about. There's what the use case looks like. Okay, and then up here, so your task is to develop a use case process model diagram that depicts the unique user interaction with a patient registration scenario for a telehealth patient registration. Your process model diagram must include the following. So you need to use these standard UML symbols for use case diagramming, and this is a great resource that I have for you here, hyperlinked. There's also a video that offers some instruction on how to develop a use case diagram. So quite a few resources here for you to use. And then your use case should include a minimum of 3 steps, and the steps should be high level. Each step should describe a session with the system, as stated on this Carnegie Mellon website. It talks about an open shutter, flash, and close shutter, like a very simple step-by-step process. And so, but also high level, right? And so I'm not going to read all this for you, but it's a really good example, okay? And a way for you to kind of think high level about this scenario. And then what you need to do once you have your diagram developed for the use case, you need to have a textual summary of how to interpret the diagram. So there should be a summary for each user. So in this case, you need to identify 2 users that interact with the patient registration scenario. And then your scenario must be different from the example that I provided below. Obviously, because like I said before, it's not CPOE, it's patient registration. So make sure that you provide that textual summary. I'll be looking for that. And there is an example of that as well for that CPOE use case. So, and I have this note here that I'm not as concerned with the actual accuracy of the process, but rather your understanding of how to diagram a potential scenario. Okay. So you know, it's not going to be perfect, and I don't want you to stress about it. I want to see that you can diagram a potential, you know, a scenario, okay? And then you're going to use an application called Lucidchart. Some students have used this in the past, and so there's information here on signing up for Lucidchart. The nice thing about Lucidchart is that you're able to share it. It works very much like Google Documents, where you can share with your group members and all kind of work on the chart or the use case or diagram at the same time, or what independently, obviously, but then everybody can see what has been done. So I think it's a great resource. And so definitely go in and get signed up for that and stuff so you all can share. And then also there are actual UML tools within Lucidchart. And here's some, you go to templates and then you search for UML. So you'll see them. Okay. All right. Then your last deliverable is that proposed telehealth visit registration workflow, okay? So in the as-is workflow diagram above, you are able to see the current patient registration process at the primary care clinic. What would the patient registration process look like for telehealth visits? So you are being charged with drawing a redesigned workflow for the use of patient registration software for telehealth visits in the form of a swim lane process map. Again, you should use Lucidchart for this, okay? And what you should, here's kind of laid out some of the steps you should take kind of for this assignment. And so first, analyze the as-is swim lane diagram above, okay? So within your swim lane diagram, the group needs to exhibit that, you did analyze that. And so, and I should be able to see some research and evidence of that, of you analyzing that original process and then updating it with telehealth. So the way I'll know that you kind of researched it is just by what you demonstrate, right? That you show me the new process using the patient portal to launch the telehealth visit in terms of getting them registered and set up for that, because all of that takes place at the time of registration, right? So when that person is saying, hey, I want a telehealth visit with Dr. Jones, that registration clerk is going to have to take some extra steps to make sure that patient is prepared for that visit, right? And so it might be asking the question, are you already enrolled in our patient portal? And some of those kinds of things. So that's how I'll know that you did the research. Again, you're going to use Lucidchart. And then in order to develop your swim lane diagram, your group must understand what a swim lane diagram looks like, right? And what it is. And you should identify the primary stakeholders involved in the patient registration process. And so there's a sample swim lane diagram here, but Margaret A's text is also a great resource. And I've given you the page numbers there for you to look at how to develop that swim lane diagram. Also, if you just Google swim lane diagram, you're going to get a ton of examples. So you'll be fine there. I think I'll be able to see that and what that should look like. And then once you have completed the steps above, your group is ready to begin drawing your proposed redesigned patient registration process for telehealth visits. So here's those caveats I was talking about a little bit earlier. So you do not need to account for downtime in the registration system within this workflow, okay? I don't want you to put in a bunch of those kinds of extra things that could happen. Let's just focus on if the registration process goes, fairly well. There's going to be some decisions, obviously, that need to be made, but let's just assume that there isn't going to be a downtime or any of those kinds of outlier things that could potentially happen. Okay. And then definitely use appropriate UML tools and workflow symbols to develop your swim lane diagram. Okay. I want it to look professional. I want it to look, how do I want to say it? Clean, concise. I want it to flow well. Those are the things that I'm looking for, right? Even if your process is not perfect, I'm still going to be looking that you have arrows pointing in the right directions. The one thing I will tell you, this is a little tip, a little hint for all of you. The one thing that I notice kind of gets students in trouble is when they have two arrows coming off of a single symbol. Now, you do need two arrows when you have a decision symbol, which is the diamond, right? You're going to have a yes or a no, or whatever the decision might be. But if you have two arrows coming off of, say, just a regular step in the process, I don't know what that means, regular, but like a more just like kind of a logical step in the process, I would definitely question that, because what is the person, me, that's following that workflow going to, like, which one should they do, right? If you have two arrows coming off. And typically if you have two arrows, there probably should be a decision there. Okay. So one thing that I always look for, that's just kind of one of those things, like as your instructor, those are the things that I know always trip students up. And at the minute I see two arrows coming off of it, and then I start questioning. And so the whole thing is for maybe having somebody that isn't even in your group take a look at your swim lane diagram and say, okay, well, what happens here? Or, does this make sense? Those kinds of things. Okay. All right. And so in the end, your swim lane diagram, your group swim lane diagram, is really the center of the Unit 5 discussion forum. So when your group has completed the swim lane diagram, I'd really like you to export it as a PDF and save it. And then one group member should attach the swim lane diagram in a new discussion post thread and identify all the group member names within the post. So you can put all of your group member names in the subject line or within the post. It doesn't really matter to me, but just so that you as classmates know who designed the swim lane. Okay. So as individuals, so a group makes that post, and then as individuals, I would really like you each to reply to one group post. Okay. So each group member should really respond to a different initial group post. But if that's not feasible, I understand, but I'm going to be looking for each individual to make at least one, okay, substantial post. And then your group should also kind of talk about how you want to handle questions. So if group one of the members of that group asks a question of group two about their swim lane diagram, group two, how are you going to handle that? Are you designating one person to kind of monitor the discussion forum? How are you all going to kind of take turns? Like, how are you going to handle that? So just something to kind of sort out amongst your group. But I definitely want you guys asking each other questions. Why did your group decide to do this? Because, my group was looking at it like this. Those are the kinds of things, like, I want you to have discussion around the variations in the workflow and maybe some of the things that you found about telehealth and registration processes. Okay. All right. I've been talking a really long time, but I hope it's been helpful, but both the use case and the swim lane diagram should be exported from Lucidchart as a PDF. That's the one way that we can ensure that everybody's able to view it and that I'm able to view it. So work to do that. And so when you're ready to, again, like, just one group member needs to post that swim lane diagram. And then when you're ready to submit all of the assignment deliverables in Brightspace at the very end of the unit. So I'm going to go back to the calendar because I know this always comes up. So on Sunday, August 1st, when all of these elements need to be posted in Brightspace, just one group member needs to make that post or that submission. So you're going to post the meeting minutes, you're going to post the workflow, submit the meeting minutes, the workflow and process mapping report, and then the swim lane diagram. Okay. So really that report is your minutes, and then that use case diagram, right? And then your workflow diagram, your swim lane. Okay. All right, that's a lot of terminology that I'm using that's different. I apologize for that. All right, and then at the end, if you do, if you have one central resource or a couple that really were instrumental in developing your workflow, please cite them. Those are really helpful for me and your classmates, right? To see, post them with your workflow diagram, your swim lane, or even when you submit your assignment to me, just have one reference page there where you're sharing those. And then just so you all know, the grade given for the group assignment deliverable will be the same for every student in the group. So that means discussion forum, obviously, unless you don't make a response post, then you won't get the same grade, obviously, as your classmates. But for the most part, that is all the same grade. And then of course, you're going to get the same grade for your swim lane diagram, your use case, and your meeting minutes, okay? Unless, again, there is one group member or whatever that just absolutely does not participate, does not attend any meetings, and really did not contribute anything substantially to the assignment. Please keep me posted on that. I obviously want to know that. And then this is the pretty much the exact same rubric that is built in Brightspace. And so I have it here for you guys too, so that you don't have to be flip-flopping back and forth between Brightspace and the assignment instructions. So I have talked long enough, and I hope that you found this helpful. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer anything. We've had some really good discussions going in the 6502 community. So that's a great way for, if you have the question, most likely one of your classmates do as well. So I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I hope that you enjoyed this assignment. I enjoy the discussion and grading it too, because I always like to see what you guys come up with. So, all right, I'll let you go. Thank you. Bye.